So it's a few minutes after 4 o'clock. We're going to go ahead and begin the webinar. My name is Ed Robeck. I'm the Director of Education and Outreach for the American Geosciences Institute. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to this webinar, which is recorded and will be posted online, along with several others that have been done over the past 2 years that have all been focused on various dimensions of the next generation science standards in earth and space science, and supporting the teachers who are working to implement those in classrooms and others who are working to support them in other ways. I have been working on these webinars along with some other people, and those include Aida Awad. And Aida, would you like to introduce yourself?
Had to find the mute button, sorry. Hi everybody, I'm Aida Awad. I'm currently an instructor at Broward College. I'm a former Albert Einstein Distinguished Educator Fellow from the Department of Energy, and I'm also currently the Secretary Treasurer of the National Association of Geoscience Teachers. So welcome on behalf of us.
And Carla McAuliffe is also part of the team that organizes these. Carla, can you say a few words? So I'm not hearing Carla. I'm going to go ahead and move on. We're being supported today by John McDarris, who is with the Science Education Resources Center at Carleton College and also works for the National Association of Geoscience Teachers. Carla is the Executive Director of the National Earth Science Teachers Association, and the three organizations collaborate on this webinar series. John, you can go ahead. We have three speakers today who will be sharing some things with us about a sampling of federal resources for STEM education in earth and space sciences. June Teisan is an outreach specialist in NOAA's Office of Education. Trina Ferrell is with the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in the education and public outreach portion of that. And Anna Normand is with the American Geosciences Institute, working in our Geoscience Policy program. We will let each speaker go forward for about 15 minutes. Then what we'd like to do is have people type questions into the chat box as we finalize each of the speaker sections. And then we'll return to those questions at the end of the webinar so that we can address some of them to the different speakers. We'll type them in, but then we won't really ask some of the speakers until after all are presented. And then we'll do a few announcements, and we'll move on with our days. But really want to welcome all of you for being here, and looking forward to the entertainment that we'll have here. So, John, you can move forward. One of the things that we want to make sure and start with is this is a webinar series that occurs the second Thursday of each month. We do skip a few months. We do skip December, and we skip a couple of months in the summer. But you can see the list of past webinars and future webinars at the links that are given there. And the next webinar will be January 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. The list of the webinars and other events that have taken place in support of NGSS implementation, such as conference presentations and such, is there in the programming flyer that's listed, and the email link to other workshops and events can be seen at the URL there as well. This, as I said, is being recorded, and the slide deck is up also at that address. Thank you, John. So now I'd like to introduce June Teisan of NOAA's Office of Education to begin the presentation. June?
Thank you, Ed. Hello, everybody. We can move on to slide 2. Just to give you an idea of my background, as Ed mentioned, I'm an outreach specialist in Washington, D.C., and I came to that position as an Einstein Fellow a few years ago, and they've kept me on in a contract position I came to DC after a 27-year career teaching middle school in the Detroit area. And so this has been a wonderful opportunity to connect my classroom experiences to efforts at the national level and inform the work that they're doing in creating outreach materials and materials for you in the classroom. So if we move to slide 3, I'm sure that many of you already know what NOAA is, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And you see our vision and our mission listed there. And the key focus of the agency is science and service and stewardship. And I think, John, if you hit it one more time, there's an overlay that comes up that says, sort of our tagline is that NOAA takes the pulse of the planet. And what we mean by that is continually monitoring the health of the planet. In fact, I found it interesting that NOAA collects 20 terabytes of data every day, which is just mind-boggling. So slide 4, just to give you an idea of the scope of NOAA's work, our efforts reach from the surface of the sun to the depths of the ocean. And you see pictured a number of our line offices, many of them I'm sure you're familiar with, and probably the National Weather Service is our most forward-facing as people check the weather daily. Slide 5. As educators in our work with students, we seek out a variety of rich supports to do our job, and always looking for that one perfect fit. And NOAA has so many resources available to you. You see listed there instructional materials and access to our data, but everything along an array, even including citizen science projects where kids can actively conduct research. So that's really exciting to be able to bring some of these to you. Slide 6. The first step as educators often is to do a web search, and NOAA.gov is a great place to start. And you look over to the left of the slide and see our 9 line offices listed. And from there, you could just spend hours sifting and sorting. But as educators, our time is short. And so with the demands of our teaching being so intense, that's why I really am so glad to have this opportunity to give an overview of some of the geoscience opportunities. Slide 7. You may not be aware of the geographic spread of NOAA facilities, and these maps show that. Likely that there's one or maybe several facilities near you. In fact, maybe in your own backyard. Slide 8. Knowing that you could have these facilities close to you and not be aware of them, our Office of Education created a series of documents that are called just that, NOAA in your backyard. And I strongly suggest this be something that you seek out in the next few days as you're wondering, where can I find a speaker for my classroom or a field trip nearby or some training. What we have done is created this map by region, and when you click on your region, you're going to get a document that has hyperlinks to the people and programs that are available to you. So this cuts down on a lot of search time for educators. So you might find somebody with the Weather Service to come in and talk with your students. You might find an interesting field trip in the Marine Sanctuary near you. So you're going to get in touch with living, breathing people when you are able to access NOAA in your backyard. Slide 9. Again, going to the web, but this time to our education portal, NOAA.gov/education. And John, there should be an overlay with this one as well that shows our resource collections. It's sort of our next stop on a tour of all things NOAA. There's an array of educational support materials available to you here, and they're arranged topically across multiple grade levels. So let's say you're interested in climate, slide 10. You would see that carbon cycle is a first stop on that offering. And there's lesson plans, multimedia, career profiles, so many choices and easy access. So as I said, these are found at NOAA.gov/education. And slide 11. So if we move away from sort of the library of resources to a very specific offering, we've been redesigning a product that we had available for many years, and it's data in the classroom. You see on the left listed those units that are already finished, El Nino, sea level rise, and coral bleaching, and those that are further down the pike in being prepared for us to use. Again, mentioning that we have so much data available to us, and we know that our students, it's going to be a challenge for them to understand big data and be able to navigate that. And what better resource for data and data training than to use the robust scientific data available through NOAA. So let me tell you a little bit more about data in the classroom. On slide 12, you see that, let's say we're going to pursue El Nino as the unit. There, you'll have available to you a story map, which is utilizing an online data visualization platform called Esri. Some of you might be familiar with it, and I've got some slides to show what that looks like. And then you see a teacher's guide, of course. But I also, because I was there and I said, not every school has access to robust Wi-Fi. We need some PowerPoint slides that are available for those times that you can have it up your sleeve as a teacher to have these data visualizations available. And so they responded to that and created supplemental PowerPoints. And then you'll see at the bottom that they are linked to science education standards. Data in the classroom is predominantly focused on higher middle level and early high school students. Slide 13 is going to take us right to a screen capture of data in the classroom. And you see across the top that each tab is very clear for students to use. And again, this can be used if you have a one-to-one classroom, so we've made it so it's iPad friendly, along with able to use it on your laptops. You could have students do this solo or in groups, or you can use it for whole group instruction. So there's an introduction, and then as you see across, there's deeper levels. So we'll go ahead and delve into level 1 with slide 14. And you see that in studying El Nino, of course, we want students to understand how to read sea surface temperature. But oftentimes they struggle with what a visual map will communicate to them. And so level 1 is building that foundational skill of understanding this. And you see on the far left, there's a home, and then there's several buttons. You'll see then that there are 3 sections to this level 1. And again, students can navigate this. They're certainly savvy in this regard. And if we go to slide 15, you'll see that now we're delving into false color maps. And I don't know about you, but with my middle school students, when they would look at something like this, their initial response is, oh my gosh, some paint cans exploded. It doesn't have a lot of meaning to them, and that's why we start at level 1 with the foundation. And by the time we move up to level 5, we've developed a level of mastery within the students that they can do self-directed learning. So notice up at the top, there's a tag that says Get Data, and this is where we help them find our data online and then create projects with our data. So I hope this particular platform is interesting to you and that we've whet your appetite on this. So this is, again, dataintheclassroom.noaa.gov. We're on slide 16, and we have, from our National Weather Service, JetStream, an online school for weather. And this aligns closely to K-12 science frameworks, but also I find that it's so useful to have this topic matrix because it makes it easy to scan and evaluate what segments of these might be useful for you, what might fill a gap. Some people have said this is almost like a semester course contained on the internet and brought to you by the National Weather Service. It's, again, middle school and high school level, but there are some activities that could be utilized in an elementary setting. So slide 17, calling all educators. This is a terrific community, a vibrant group called Planet Stewards. And it's part PD and part action-oriented. So if we go to slide 18, you'll see there's 2 facets to the Planet Stewards. First is a wide-open community that's offering book clubs and webinars. You'll see in the center of the page there that they just had a webinar earlier this week about coral bleaching. These webinars are scheduled in the evenings, and they are archived so that they're available to you, but they could also be useful in staff development outreach for science departments and such. So it's a way to refuel and refresh yourself to participate in this. And then the second level of the stewardship, the Planet Stewards, is the opportunity to dig more deeply and access their help in developing projects for students. And they also offer some grant monies for that. And you see at the bottom of the page that they've opened the application period. So feel free to explore that. Slide 19. NOAA has hours and hours of fascinating footage, whether it's about storms or oceans. And so we have a production team that's pulled together in the past year themed video collections that come in sets of 3 to 4 minute video segments that teach about a topic, and they do so in a very engaging and visual way. And again, I recommended to them that they make these downloadable so that you have them to have on hand. And so topics could range, the most recent one, it's called Ocean Today, Every Full Moon. And they're putting out these series once a month, every full moon. And some of the topics have included coral comeback, talking about the stresses against that corals face, and storm safety and marine debris. So a lot available there, and this target audience is middle school, but enriching for all. Slide 20. I want to make you aware of a source of timely, authoritative scientific data and information about climate. Climate.gov is sort of a single one-stop shop, and it's an award-winning website, so that never hurts. Slide 21. A couple of key aspects to point out to you. The fact that there's a climate data primer. We don't know everything, and it's always good to refine our skills, or to point students to something like this to walk through the basics to help you understand and explore climate data. And then in the lower left is a screen capture of our, on that site, their climate dashboard. And these are interactive displays of how climate variables are changing over time, so students can examine over 40 years of archived data. So that's climate.gov. Slide 22. I'm a big fan of citizen science, which I'm sure many of you already know is the scientific research that's conducted either in whole or in part by non-professional scientists. Our students can be engaged in citizen science. And NOAA is working with a number of federal agencies to establish this citizenscience.gov. It's a compendium of projects. So if you click the catalog button and move to it, move to slide 23, you'll see that you can sort it. You can sort it by topic that you're interested in or by region of the country. I sorted by agency, and you can see where NOAA's projects are across the country. And right now we have almost 40 projects listed on citizenscience.gov. And if we move to slide 24, I pulled out a couple of the geoscience-specific projects. These first two deal with cell phone technology. The first one is called CrowdMag, and it utilizes the magnetometers in modern cell phones. One of the goals of their research is to map local magnetic noise sources, and in that way improve the accuracy of magnetic navigation systems. And so you could have your students doing this with just a downloaded app. The one at the bottom has a real short acronym, but it stands for Meteorological Phenomenon Identification Near the Ground. So that's why we call it MPING instead of the long term. It was developed by NOAA's National Severe Storm Laboratory, and essentially it's crowdsourcing data to ground truth satellite info, and they use it to validate and improve their algorithms. If we move to slide 25, we're moving to an opposite end of the technology spectrum as far as with COCOROS, the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. This is very elegant in its simplicity. You purchase a rain gauge. It's about $35. Install it in your schoolyard, and students take a daily measurement of what precipitation fell. Very simple, but very powerful, because they enter the data onto this site, and then they have access to years of the data that's been entered, and all across the region. And it's turned out that Kokorosk has grown into the largest provider of daily precipitation observations. So the last thing that I wanted to share with you is on slide 26, and it's a powerful professional development event. It's called the NOAA Teacher at Sea program, and it offers educators a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to conduct scientific research side by side with NOAA staff on board active NOAA research vessels. I was out on the Gulf of Mexico 2 summers ago collecting ichthyoplankton, and it was a highlight of my career, and I was able to bring that back to my students as well. So final slide, slide 27. I love this image because it's what I would always shoot for. I knew that I taught the best subject, science, because it inspires awe and interest in the world around my students. And by using these tools that I hope I've been able to offer to you here, we can work together to build a more scientifically literate citizenry and draw students into STEM careers. So last slide, 28. If there's any way that we can help, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
June, thank you very much. That was really thorough and very well described. I know that I'm made aware of a number of resources that I didn't know existed. I'm going to remind people that this slide deck is available so that they can go back through the things that June has shared. But thank you very much, June, for that. And I'm going to invite people again to questions, if there are any, in the chat box. You can send them to me individually, as a couple people have, or you can also send them to just in the chat to everyone box. So again, thank you, June and Trina. We can move forward one, John, to Trina's first slide.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Hope everyone is well. So my name is Trina Ferrell, and I'm the Education and Public Outreach Lead for Earth Science at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. And our primary focus at NASA Goddard is Earth and space science, and we also do a lot of engineering. So a little bit about myself. I'm actually a former classroom teacher. I actually taught high school chemistry, biology, and algebra. I'm presently an adjunct professor at the University of Maryland, and I have my doctorate is in environmental science. So I was just going to talk with you a little bit about a few things that we do at NASA Goddard related to Earth and space science. So we've got a wonderful website, www.nasa.gov. If you go there, you can type in education, and it will give you a plethora of different resources. So what I tried to do was to narrow it down to some more usable Earth and space science websites. So one of the biggest one that we have is called NASA Wavelength, and it is a phenomenal resource for educators. And the resources are for all of our different divisions. So it's Earth science and space science. And I think this is a very, very good tool because it's divided up by different levels of education. So we've got pre-K through kindergarten, which we've got about 658 resources. There's a middle school division, which has got about 958 resources. High school division has about 841 resources. Higher education has 98 resources on this webpage. And there's a vocational section that's got 26 resources. And for informal education, we have about 555 resources. And there's also a phenomenal homeschool section on this same webpage. So I think that that's a phenomenal resource for teachers relating to Earth and space science. We also have a great website, science.nasa.gov/earth-science, Earth-science, and that talks a lot about our different Earth science missions that we have going on. So that's a great resource, I think. Another great thing that we have to offer would be, we are huge into citizen science too. So we've got a thing called Global Learning and Observation to Benefit the Environment, called GLOBE. And so GLOBE is kind of nice because it has resources for educators that you can do within a classroom time period. It will not cost you a lot of money because a lot of the resources you already have in your classroom. So it's nice. So you can take your kids outside. They can do a lot of environmental protocols related to the environment, soil, air, temperature, things like that. So it's a phenomenal one. And then we're proud to say that we actually started an app called the Globe Observer app, which you can download to your phone. It works on an Android platform or an iPhone platform, and it is very, very cool because we can have students and other participants do citizen science for us. So we've got different protocols related to this Globe Observer app on your phone. One protocol that we have is for clouds. So you can go outside, download the app, and you can take cloud pictures. And it tells you how to do it. It's very self-explanatory. And those cloud pictures will go back to our scientists. We also have, related to this, we have a mosquito protocol app. So you can buy a little microscope that you hook on your phone, which is probably under $30, and you can actually look at standing water in your area and help us identify mosquito larvae that are in that area. So we're quite excited. We just launched that this year, so we're quite excited. And then our big event that we had was the eclipse. And during the eclipse, we actually had people support us by taking temperatures, whether you were in the path of totality or not, and we tried to compare and contrast different temperatures across the country. So those are just some of the things that we have to offer. Other things is that we've got a great resource in our backyard. If you ever get a chance, if you're near NASA Goddard, please come by our visitor center. We have a visitor center that's open to the public. We have a brand new Earth Science exhibit that's in there, so you'll see a lot of things about Earth Science. And there's a plethora of other different things in this in the museum as well. We have a science on a sphere, so you can see live data in different movies. We have different areas, a solarium that deals with the sun. You can see images of the sun. So if you get a chance, you can definitely stop by and see our visitor center. Outdoors, we have a rocket garden. So these are just some of the resources that we have. I just want to talk about a few of them. And then please look forward on the Earth Science side. In 2018, we've got ISET 2 is going to launch, and GRACE is going to launch. We've got some missions that are going to launch too. And with our missions, we also have a lot of educational programs associated with our missions. So that's all I have. Thank you. If you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.
Thank you very much, Trina. We got a little bit behind you in the slides, and I know that you're calling in, so I just wanted to make people aware that there is a little bit of additional information about the GLOBE program on the slide that we just put up very, very briefly, and it'll be available on the slide deck that's posted after the webinar as well. So thank you again, Trina, for doing that. As we move into the next phase, I just wanted to preface this a little bit. Anna Normand is an AGI Policy Associate, and I'll let her introduce herself, but the segment is really designed to build awareness that the webinar has already shared a number of federal resources that relate to Earth and space science education. Those resources are made available by the federal government, and it is always helpful for people in the government to hear from people who are making use of those resources and to hear the support and the opinions that people have about those resources. So that's really Anna's portion of this webinar, and I'm going to open it up to her now to share her thoughts about that.
Hi everyone, thanks Ed. I want to apologize, I have a cold, so hopefully y'all can hear me well enough. Like Ed said, I'm the AGI Policy Associate. I have a PhD in studying wetland soils, but last year I was a Sea Grant Canals Legislative Fellow in the Senate Commerce Committee, with jurisdiction over NOAA, so I really enjoyed the first part of the presentation, highlighting all of NOAA's programs. Do I click this slide? Okay. So this afternoon I want to talk about engaging with decision makers. My experiences focuses more congressionally, so I'll be speaking more about that, but these concepts apply to state and local levels. So first, how can federal policymaking affect your work? How can you get involved at the national level, and how to get involved at the local level? So of course, one thing that decision makers, especially politicians, do is they write legislation. One type of legislation is authorizing legislation, and that authorizes the government to do a specific function. So establish or adjust or actually kill programs and functions of the federal government. We saw a lot of good examples of programs that NOAA and NASA put on, and many of those were authorized by Congress and told NASA or NOAA exactly what they wanted to do, our side, we generally wants you to do this and leaves it up to the federal agencies to figure out how to accomplish those programs. Becoming more popular to track lately is appropriations legislation. So every year the president requests funding for different agencies, but Congress ultimately gets to decide who gets the funding. Obviously they have constitutional power of the purse, and so each year so-called discretionary funding should get passed, and they should pass separate bills each year, usually. And the recent pass has been bundled into one big bill. The place to watch these bills are the appropriations committees, and so I have a link to the Senate and to the House Appropriations websites. And then for educators and geoscience educators, I'd say the specific subcommittees and bills to look at are labor, health and human services and education, commerce, justice and science, which is NASA, NSF, and NOAA, and interior and environment, which will include USGS. So it's important to track this legislation and to tell your members what is really important for you to be funded. And one way to figure out what they're thinking is to look at report language that comes out with the bill. So it's non-binding, but it really tells you what the members think are important. Then also remarks that they give to the public. So this year, we have a new administration, so the president's budget request came out in the late spring. And that request differed a lot from the past administration. We saw the request to have a large increase in defense spending and to make it budget neutral. There were a lot of non-defense programs that had funding requested at a lower level. And so I have highlighted here some of the different agencies that are important to geoscience and showing how some of them had % of their budgets cut. And it's important to note, as you see, NASA didn't have too much cut, but sometimes money changes from different programs inside of an agency. Really great resource, American Institute of Physics took a deep dive into STEM education recently and looked at the president's numbers, but then also the bills that the House introduced and the Senate introduced for this year. And as you can see, there's lots of Department of Ed numbers, but I wanted to focus on some of the other agencies, like NSF. The president requested -14%, but you see Congress held mostly flat. NASA Office of Education had a 2/3 decrease, but you can also see Congress, particularly the Senate, wanted flat funding. NASA Science Mission Directorate of Education got an increase from everyone, so that's really exciting. Department of Energy had a little decrease from the president, but Congress is requesting flat funding. And then NOAA Office of Education, unfortunately, was zeroed out by the president on the budget request, but you see in the Senate, they want that program to continue with standard funding. So how do you keep track of all this information? Congress moves really fast sometimes, slower others. But American Geosciences Institute puts out products that help geoscientists and geoeducators see what's going on in the federal government. So we have a policy monthly review that we put out every month, and it's on our website, and then you can also sign up to receive it in your inbox directly. Another thing that we have is we track geoscience funding. So we track a couple of the spending bills, what the president requests, and then what is appropriated by Congress. And we have those throughout the year so you can see funding trends. Also, the AAAS tracks R&D budgets very well, so we also encourage you to look at their website. So I think Ed wanted me to also talk about how do I make a difference? How do you get your voice heard supporting these programs? The decision makers, congressional or otherwise, can make difference by, of course, writing and amending legislation, voting. They also do things like support grants. My mom came to visit me last year and wanted to meet with her congressional offices about parks development plan she had. So we met with the offices, and they pointed us to specific grants, and then also offered to write letters of support from the congressional member to support the application for that grant. So there's also things offices can do like that to help you out. And then also, press is good for everyone. If you're having a cool event, invite your member. They love public relations events. And then also, if they can include a topic that's important in a floor speech, then that gives the topic recognition. On a national level, one of the most basic things people will tell you to do is to call your congressional office. This is the fastest way to get your input heard. You can call the DC office. You can use the Capitol switchboard if you don't know your office's number. But I also encourage, I just came from Florida, and there's 20 million people or so in Florida, and so a lot of times the DC office is tied up. So also members have local offices. The Florida office has 7 or 8 different offices. So feel free to call there. They report up to the national office. Then you can write your congressional office, but be aware that letters take a while to be received. So I think the most effective way to really make a difference is to develop a relationship with the staffer that has the ear of the decision maker. So in Congress, that would likely be the legislative assistant or legislative aide, and they're an expert on your issue area. So they write legislation, letters, and speeches that the member will use to decide on actions. I was talking to my friend who's in LA, and he expressed the need to get unbiased information. You have all these interest groups, but just get really unbiased information, factual information, and then they also need to know about local problems or successes in your issue area. Things that they might want to know from you, or you have an opinion, is do you like a program, or some of those NOAA programs really important, and they might be at risk of funding cuts or need to be reauthorized. Do you want them to vote no on a specific bill, or not, or support a specific program or not? And is there a piece of legislation that's of utmost importance to you? And what's really helpful is if you can offer a solution and then defend what you propose, so that they can then go to the member confidently and come up with a fix to a problem. So a couple pointers when you talk to a legislative assistant or a staff member, talk about numbers and impact. This is really useful for them to relate the importance to their boss. And then also another effective tool is to use a story. It's a lot easier for people to remember a story, and then for their boss to get engaged when they hear that story. It might be like, how do I find this person? It's actually pretty interesting. I've had a lot of luck by just calling the front office and asking them who is the K-12 person, or who is the person that handles environment and energy, and they'll likely give you the email or phone of the staffer. If you're looking to contact a congressional staffer, if you know their first and last name, you can use the formula that you see in front of you to figure out the email of that staffer. And one thing to remember, staffers are really busy, but I know y'all are busy too, so just mutual respect of time is appreciated. I think education is the perfect way to get involved with local offices. You can do activities, bring people in. And so members will have, representatives will have one office that they will go back to during working days, whereas senators will have multiple offices and they might be busy around the state. And this is a perfect opportunity to have FaceTime with a member and share your work, or at least talk to a local staffer there. They might be generalists, but they should be tied in locally. And then sometimes staffers from DC will accompany the member to the state. So I was at a congressional town hall, and I wanted to talk to a legislative staffer about federal regulations, like environmental regulations. And I went to one, and I said, who's your environmental person? Who's your environmental LA? And she was like, I am. So the DC staffer came down to the local level. I wanted to point out a case study. We have someone that's been involved with AGI lately, Dr. Sarah Fortner. She is a professor at Wittenberg University in Ohio, teaches a global climate change course. she regularly meets with her district office, and for her course, the students had to do an engagement activity. And so 3 students decided to meet with the district office talking about the Citizens Climate Lobby, and she said they were really well received. So she's developed a relationship at the local office. Sarah then came to D.C. this September to participate in Geoscience Congressional Visits Day. And when we visited her district office of Warren Davidson, we sat down and talked to the LA, and she discussed her relationship with the district office and how her students visited. And it was interesting because the LA was like, oh, I know exactly the staffer you talk to. He reports up to me all the time. I get all of his information. So it was nice that there was already this relationship with the office. She also handed the staffer a one-pager about local work that she's doing and her students are doing in town. And so anytime you go to a congressional office, it's always good to have a one-pager that has those numbers and maybe tells a story. When my mom came, she had a big binder full of this parks development plan, and I told her, no, we have to stop what we're doing and make a one-pager for tomorrow. So AGI provides a way to get involved if you want to come to D.C. and meet with your member of Congress. We have Geosciences Congressional Visits Day, or GeoCVD. It's in September. And you can apply online to come through AGI. Also, there are other member societies, AGU, GSA, AMS, SSSA, and others that also are involved and bring their members. And we do a training that's obviously more extensive than 15 minutes. And then we schedule meetings with different offices of your members so you can share the importance of geoscience to your members. AGI also has a page on our website called Communicating with Congress. So we have tips for a lot of the things I talked about today and more. And then AGI's member societies have great resources too, so they're linked on this website. One thing that can be useful when visiting congressional offices or visiting other decision makers is AGI put out in September Geoscience in Your State fact sheets. So they are front and back documents highlighting the importance of geoscience, whether it's workforce, the resources you have in your state, and then also how federal funding is supporting different programs in your state. So these are brand new, most up-to-date information, very factual, and they've been very well received. And AGI is also putting out fact sheets on different topics that may be of interest, and these are easy to read, but also fact-checked by scientists, experts in the field. So these might be useful if they are of a topic that you want to discuss. Please visit our Policy and Critical Issues website here. Feel free to email us at the first email that goes to the entire geopolicy team, and then please feel free to email me at any point. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, very much for that. That's really quite informative, and it underscores the opportunity that educators and all citizens have really to engage on these issues. And when programs are important to our work or to our students or to ourselves to voice opinions about those. I did want to ask, I'm going to start one question with you. There are some budget activities that are just about to be taken. Can you go over the timeline just really quickly about like what's happening soon?
Sure. So for anyone that isn't congressional expert, this year has probably been the most confusing for tracking the budget process. But basically where we're at, FY fiscal year 17 numbers were finally passed in May. And so we were supposed to pass a fiscal year 18 budget by the end of September. That was not passed. That was, Congress did a continuing resolution, and what that does is it extends fiscal year 17 numbers out until the deadline Congress has set, and that deadline is December 8th. So those numbers for fiscal year 17 are extended until December 8th, where Congress either has to pass a spending bill or has to pass a continuing resolution for the government not to shut down. Last year they kicked it back to the spring, so we will see if they meet the December 8th deadline or not. The House has passed all 12 of their spending bills. The Senate has passed 8. 4 of the Senate bills we have not seen. One of those includes the Interior spending bill, which includes USGS. We haven't seen from the Senate what they will mark for USGS. But as you've seen in the education chart, has been pretty. I've been pretty thankful for the numbers that we've been seeing coming out of Congress. The program that I'm closest with NOAA is Sea Grant, and it was slated to be cut completely, and it actually has flat funding from Congress. So I hope that's helpful. It's a very confusing time, and we're putting out monthly review updates on it.
But Anna, just to make sure I understand, so now's a good time, because if they are going to try to hit this early December deadline, they're listening now to input. Is that correct?
Yes. I think a lot of those numbers are squared away. Now's a good time to really say, can you please pass the budget, especially if you like the numbers that are already coming out. The budget cycle will start over again in the spring. President Trump should put out his budget in February, so generally spring is the time that people really contact their congressional members about funding. Definitely right when the president's budget comes out, that's the time to start contacting them, because they'll be sending letters of support around. So February, March is really generally where you want to target. Okay.
All right, well, thank you for that. And I just want to point out in the chat box that John Porterfield has pointed out that the Citizens Climate Lobby will be visiting legislative officials in the next week or so, and people can look at that and maybe see about providing some input there as well. That seems like something that could be looked at quite effectively. So I just want to return really quickly to a couple of questions that we got. Again, thank you, Anna. I don't want to go off without thanking you for that, the wonderful outline that you provided. But I want to return to June and Trina a little bit for some questions that I got there. And June, one question that was raised was, as you were talking about the different tools and resources that are available, one of the questions was, is there any teacher preparation materials or anything that helps teachers get ready to use these materials effectively?
As far as our data in the classroom, we have teacher materials that go along with that. And for a lot of what we do offer, there are lesson plans and such that outline suggested steps. Absolutely, yes, most of these have that. And some of the sites that I mentioned, their search bar would take you to those lessons, and yeah, they would outline how to enact each of these suggested activities.
Okay, that's great. And there was also a question put in the chat box, and I'll go ahead since you're speaking, is what are the qualifications for the Teacher at Sea program?
It's an extensive application process, but so worth it. When I talk to people about it, I like to highlight the fact that they're going to ask you, why do you want to do this? What do you bring to the experience as far as, are you a teacher who's always been passionate about a particular ocean subject? And then the second focus of the application is usually about how would you bring this to your students? How would this inform your teaching? And then how would you take what you are, they ask you to write lesson plans after the fact of participating, and you're doing blogging while you're on the ship. How would you spread the word of this further beyond your classroom or your school so that more teachers can be impacted by the lessons that you're creating and the blog posts that you're sharing? So that's something of the focus, and I encourage anybody who's interested, get online and check that out. We have usually a number of applicants, and oftentimes about 25, I think, berths that are available for on ship, but it's well worth applying, And just because of the numbers, sometimes you have to apply a second time. I had to. But if it grabs your interest, go for it.
Thanks very much, June. One of the questions that came in for Trina had to do with GLOBE, and I remember this myself, that there was a time when to take part in the GLOBE program, teachers had to go through specific training to make use of specific protocols, and I'm not sure where that is now. I think that was the nature of the question that I got.
Okay, great question. So we do have some online, and we actually have some online trainings. You can do a lot of the protocols trainings online, and there are some face-to-face trainings as well. But you can do a lot of the protocols online, get trained. The models are online. You read up the materials, and then you answer the questions. You can do it online.
Okay. So is it necessary to do the training in order to take part in the GLOBE program?
Yes and no. So yes, in order to do the actual protocols, like if you were going to do them in your classroom. But if you want to use the Globe Observer app on your phone, no, you can just download it on your phone. But to get reinforced more background information, things like that, I suggest that you do the protocols.
Okay. A question that came in for both Trina and June, and so Trina, maybe you can start this one and then June can comment, relates to, so I think this comes out of somebody's knowledge of the GLOBE program being sort of a network of teachers, and the idea is, are there networks of teachers that are actively facilitated for NASA programs and or NOAA programs? And Trina, could you start with that one?
Yes, we do. We have networks of teachers, especially GLOBE is a great example of that. We've got people all over the United States and other countries. The GLOBE is actually an international program, so there's networks of teachers internationally. And then with a lot of our missions, they do a lot of educational outreach, and they've got a network of teachers related to their mission projects and what they're doing. So the answer to that is yes.
And are there specific places to go to get linked up with those networks?
I would go to the best place, one of the best, NASA.gov, and then type in education. You can see also that one website that I have listed on my slide, the S&D, let me see, the one website that listed on my slide, I'll tell you about the different missions, and you can actually go and click on the web for the different missions and find out what's going on for the different missions that we have related to Earth and space science.
Okay, all right, thanks very much. June,
Sure.
Do you have a comment about teacher networks?
Absolutely. The two that I highlighted one, and that's Planet Stewards, and that's a vibrant community with a lot of give and take and sharing amongst the Planet Stewards. The Teacher at Sea alumni, they have a very active group that stay in touch and often have regional meetings, face-to-face meetings, and we also at times have Teacher at Sea doing presentations at the science conferences. I'm here at the Milwaukee National Science Teacher Association Conference, and there are two Teacher at Sea alumni working with us in the exhibit booth and doing presentations. And then I would say, go to NOAA in Your Backyard, that first resource that I offered, because a number of our line offices do a lot with face-to-face teacher support and outreach. I know that with my Sea Grant office, before I came to NOAA when I was a classroom educator, I was very heavily involved with Michigan Sea Grant, and whenever they had teacher trainings, I was the first one there, and it's great to be connected in that way. So I would say go to NOAA in Your Backyard, to your region, and click on some of those hyperlinks and find out what might be in your area.
Well, good. Thanks very much. I do have one last question for Anna, and this one came in while you were talking, and the question has to do with whether you would recommend or what your thoughts are regarding students or student groups being involved in letter writing campaigns or expressing opinions to legislators and other decision makers.
Hi, thanks for that question. I think I saw a little bit of the question. For Senate offices and House ones too, there is a staffer that is in charge of receiving the letters, sending it to the LAs or subject matter experts, and then they also respond to those letters. So they are, accounted for and understanding what everyone thinks. If it's something that's really urgent, I would not recommend sending a letter because it takes time to go through Congress after the anthrax scare, so everything has to be checked. But they are received and looked at by members, staff.
Okay, and there were two nuances to that question. One was from Martin Schmidt, who asked, do they actually keep track of all the emails that come in because they get so many? And I think you were just saying that yes, indeed they do. And you were speaking specifically about letters, but you're saying that they do actually read all the emails that they get. And then the other nuance to that question was specifically with students, with young people. Is it helpful for them to also engage with this process from the decision maker's point of view?
Going back to the email and letter writing, one thing I thought about is there's a lot of automated things that you can sign on to now, and those are not effective. So a real email from an actual person or a real letter from an actual person is what they want to see. And then for students and young people engaging with the process, when I was a 4-H'er, I went to DC for this program, and we met with our members of Congress, and we were very well received. Eventually you're going to be voters. And then also I think it helps get the fear out of people from engaging in the future. That's one of the great things about Congressional Visits Day is you have these students that come up, generally grad students, but they're very nervous about meeting with their member of Congress or the staffers, and very concerned if their political opinion is different than the members. But what they find is they're very well received and they have a great conversation. So I think engaging early can help students continue as their career progresses.
Okay, thanks. That's a really good idea. I think I got through all the questions. I apologize to anyone who maybe we didn't get the question just the way you meant for me to. John, if you could go forward with the slide. We are at the top of the hour, so I just want to say really quickly, again, this is part of a webinar series that happens at a regular time. We encourage you to send the program flyer out that has the resources that have been made available through this series, and also the archive is there on the SERP website, and you can make use of that as well and encourage others to do so too. John, if you could go forward. And then I just want to thank you all very much for participating. I especially want to thank the three presenters and for each of you for the wonderful presentations that you made today. I also want to thank my colleagues that have been part of putting the series together. I'll mention that Susan Sullivan wasn't on the intro slide, but she has been a part of the series for a long time, and so she's there as well. And all of us would welcome your questions or comments. If you have anything that you would like to send, our email addresses are there. And with that, we will call this webinar finished. Really appreciate everybody's attention to these important resources and the potential for making your voice heard regarding their future. Thanks very much.